I live in a country in which the extreme right wing is very powerful and indeed fascist at this point. And despair on a political level and a personal level is a deep temptation. And hope feels a little distant right now.
I don't understand what...
They all dress like Darth Vader these days. It's the global look of the security forces. And it's the look of death. These screened faces and these armored chests and these camouflage or black uniforms confronting people who look like people, look like human beings with skin that's sweaty and colors and dresses and clothing of many kinds against Darth Vader is a powerful image. We're in the midst, of course, of many troubles. We're in the midst of extraordinary climate crisis, experienced unequally and unjustly. We're in the midst of ecocide and permanent war. We're in the midst of really a shocking hatred of migrants across the world. So one of the things someone like I can do is talk about this. I think we use the skills we've got to crack open these fearful beliefs that the established order is necessary, because it's not necessary. It's real, but it's not necessary.
Openbreken wat vanzelfsprekend lijkt, maar het niet is. Bioloog en filosoof Donna Haraway doet het al jaren. In de jaren 80 werd ze bekend met haar Cyborg-manifest. Dat ging over de verwantschap tussen mens, dier en machine.
Cyborgs for earthly survival is the pin that I...
Haar werk heeft sindsdien veel invloed gehad op de filosofie, wetenschap en kunst. Ze kreeg er de laatste jaren belangrijke prijzen voor. Als filosoof gebruikt ze taal als haar gereedschap. Haraway verzint vaak nieuwe woorden zoals Cthulhucene of Otkin en ze geeft bestaande woorden een hele nieuwe betekenis. Samen met Donna Haraway kijken we naar de wereld van vandaag, aan de hand van enkele van de ideeën waar ze bekend om werd. Ze nodigt ons uit om, zoals ze het zelf zegt, bij de problemen te blijven. Staying with the trouble.
Staying with the trouble seems to me a kind of reminder, a kind of affirmation that our responsibilities are in a thick present tense, and that the obligation of any serious person is to remain in this present and to cultivate the capacity to respond. Call that responsibility. Only for me, that is not a list of ethical principles or whatever. You don't have responsibilities. You have, you nurture the capacity to respond to what our actual situations are and what might still be possible. I'm neither optimistic nor pessimistic, but try to be engaged, because I think those two affects, optimism and pessimism, are disasters for our affective lives.
Hope is alive.
And there are different kinds of hope. That kind of future orientation toward fixing things, and that, you know, the arc of history bends toward justice, for example.
But it bends toward justice. Yes, how long? Not long.
That's a popular saying in activist movements, and one that makes me a little anxious and nervous, because I don't think there is an arc of history. The cruel optimism of the anticipation of a happy ending keeps us in a vice grip. It destroys the kind of joy and work that we really need to be doing with each other.
Adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. Because it is.
The counter to despair and the nurturing of a kind of hopefulness involves actually working, actually getting involved. And if you're actually involved in doing something, despair goes away. You're engaged. So staying with the trouble requires creativity and joy, not just understanding the crises. I think making good trouble is one of the things we absolutely need to be doing, especially now, but truly always. So I think that, I'm an elder now. And I can make my own kind of good trouble. I do it in my writing. I try to do it in my organizing, both for immigration support and for the university support against the fascists and so on. I do my best, but I also think as an elder, the role in supporting good trouble is a little different than it was when I was in my 30s. I respect and will engage in civil disobedience to a point. Now that I'm in my 80s, I am more afraid of being arrested than I was in my 30s or 50s, right? So there are limits to the kind of trouble that I will personally risk, but I will support others doing it.
Hundreds of activists arrived on several caravans and river-borne flotillas in advance of a major civil society march. On Friday night, an Indigenous-led march arrived at the perimeter of the COP's Blue Zone, a secure area accessible only to those bearing official summit credentials.
One of the leaders of the protest was Alessandra Corap Munduruku.
Meu nome é Alessandra Corap Munduruku, sou uma liderança do Rio Tapajós.
My name is Alessandra Corap Munduruku. I am a leader from the Tapajós River, which is here in the state of Pará. We came in a large delegation, and we wanted to speak and we wanted to be heard. They needed to listen to us because we are the ones that are saying what the forest is demanding. We are the ones that are saying what the river is asking for.
The fact that the representatives of major mining and the major industries have full credentials at COP30, and Indigenous peoples have very limited access to COP30 is an outrage. I mean, she is completely right, in my view, in her analysis of the outrage of transforming Indigenous lands into settler lands for Brazilian monocrop farmers, and transforming rivers of Amazonia into highways for commodities.
We know what the river is going through. We need the river. We live with the river. Why is it that they only speak about us, but that we cannot decide? And now President Lula has said that he's going to consult the people about federal decree which privatizes the rivers in the Amazon. But who is he going to consult? Is he going to consult the indigenous groups? Is he going to consult the jaguars, the fish, the animals? How is this consultation going to be? Who needs to be heard?
From every angle, this is a person who is a leader. Here's hoping she's not assassinated, because we all know something about how Indigenous leaders across Amazonia, across Mexico, across all sorts of areas in the world are being assassinated at an extremely high rate for speaking out for their leadership. We know something about the assassination rate the journalists are experiencing. Resistance is dangerous, and she's speaking out against major interests. She and the people she came with, treated very poorly, and they had to break down barriers to be heard, and then are contained by Darth Vader and the stormtroops right off the Death Star. So when I say make kin, not babies, I'm not talking about some kind of universal prescription on making babies, but I am talking about being accountable in some kind of enactment and of justice, some kind of imagination and enactment of justice that over time reduces the human burden on the earth. In my lifetime, it's gone from 2.5 to more than 8.5 billion people, and we are ever richer and ever more demanding. So I think we need to figure out ways to make kin, to non-biogenetically, not the heteronormative, patriarchal, nuclear family with, man, father, and woman, mother, and a couple of children, preferably of one of each gender, and they don't become trans when they're 13 years old and completely screw up the whole thing for their parents' imaginations. No gender fluidity, thank you, at any age. That old imagination of the post-World War II rich heteronormative nuclear family is kind of the enemy part of my imagination, right? Although there are plenty of nice people who live that way. But it's imagining odd kin. Kinship is an anthropology term. And it really means diffuse solidarity that is non-optional and it endures across generations. So when I talk about making kin, I'm not talking about some kind of easy process that you can just walk away from. The kinds of promises that are made in kinship are like friendship, but maybe even deeper.
Je kan verwantschap aangaan met mensen die geen familie zijn, maar ook met andere soorten, met dieren of met rivieren zelfs. Haraway zelf noemt haar honden vaak haar oddkin of vreemde verwanten.
Sit, please. Good girl. Wait. Oz, our terrier, our terrier dog. God, does he, every morning, pretty much every morning, my husband Rustin sets live traps. Rats live in our rats come very close to our house, and we really don't want them to move in. So we really need to control their population. So we set live traps. And Oz, our little terrier dog, he is waiting at the back door. God, is he excited about his coming job. So he and Rustin go out, and Rustin takes the live trap, sets it on the ground, and opens the door, and Oz is right there by the door, and he opens the little trap, and one poor rat goes out, and Oz grabs it by the neck, and it is over in a nanosecond. It's necessary. Is it good? No, it's not good. It's necessary. Well, anyway, we spring the trap. The rat goes out, and Oz kills the rat incredibly fast and shakes it around in total joy. My God, he enjoys this work. He takes such joy in exercising his capacities as a really talented terrier, a seriously good ratter. Human beings are an interesting species in that we are both predator and prey, evolutionarily speaking. And I think we have inherited the emotional capacities of both these relationships in the world. But I think the organization of the capacity to take pleasure in killing I think it's important to acknowledge that in the organization of war. Combat in our species is not one thing. And the terror and the horror of killing up close and face-to-face and the extreme trauma that soldiers are subjected to, both the boredom and the fear and the being blown up and seeing your friends and your brothers mainly, your brothers and your sisters killed. But I want to go to a somewhat different place, and I want to think about more than the functional reasons for training all kinds of soldiers on digital apparatuses, because that's going to be their weapon. They're going to be guiding from command centers a lot. In contemporary war training, for example, why soldiers are trained on video games. They're perfectly good functionalist reasons, because a lot of their practice as killers, as warriors, is going to be done in a screen-mediated and remote way. Soldiers train on video games, which produce a kind of, I think, the psychosocial apparatus of pleasure and kind of being blissed out and being kind of entering the game space. Clearly, this is intensely addictive for members of our species. I think that these pleasures in violence should not be underestimated. And if we underestimate the intensity of pleasure in violence, I don't think we can really address it and retrain ourselves. I think it's difficult, because I think these capacities are ready to hand in our species. And we have not trained our dog away from these pleasures. Rather, we use it to control the rats. Well, that's hardly an innocent act. There's nothing about this that's innocent.
Mensen zweven niet als een soort alleswetende God boven de wereld. Wat we doen En wat we weten, onze kennis, komt nooit vanuit een zogenaamd neutraal nergens. Alsof een onderzoeker geen eigen positie, lichaam of belangen zou hebben. Waardevolle feiten ontstaan door dat juist te erkennen. Situated knowledge noemt Haraway dat.
In order to stay with the trouble, I think we engage situated knowledge practices. Situated knowledge is an analytical tool, a conceptual proposition, was a situating in a worldliness. If you're going to build strong knowledges that are worth living and dying for, like vaccines work, for example, something you're really going to fight for, you're going to fight for facts, you have to understand how facts are made. When I was a biology graduate student in cell and developmental biology at Yale, during a period of the explosion of molecular biology, it was really taking off. And there was a great confidence, and one might almost say arrogance, in the laboratories of some of the molecular biologists, even in graduate school, that I was in real friction with many of my colleagues and peers who had an ideology of scientific objectivity, like what Barbara Smuts was taught, that you have to get yourself out of the situation in order to know the object. And really from the beginning, that struck me as just plain wrong. Barbara Smuts is a bioanthropologist whom I met when she was studying baboons in Kenya. She inherited a kind of field methodology that said the researcher should be not there, okay? Should make themselves as unnoticeable, should attempt to disappear so as to be objective, so as to be able, you had to get out of the situation in order to be objective, because otherwise you were biasing the interactions. And Barbara argued otherwise. She argued, no, you actually get better data if you learn, for example, to do the proper greeting behavior with the animals with whom you're going to be spending your day, okay? And that if you don't do that, if you pretend you're a rock, the baboons don't like it. And they're very likely to move away because they know perfectly well you are not a rock. You have a camera, you have a notepad, you're clearly another primate. So the baboons are perfectly aware that a rather strange human being is in their midst. And if they pretend that they're a rock, the baboons are going to behave differently. Whereas if you learn a correct greeting behavior and then you just very quietly hang out, they're going to accept you differently. And they're going to go about their business with the confidence that there is a polite stranger nearby, but they don't have to worry about you. And I think that was a good example of Barbara learning to do situated knowledge work. And it is not about relativism. It does not mean my fact is as good as your fact. It's not everybody to her own facts. I think the vaccine resistance movement in the United States, for example, I do my own research, right? As if all research is equivalent. I have studied I have gone to the internet and I have done my own research and this is my truth. And I'm a person who's going to say, well, fine, but you realize that's shitty research. I won't say it that way. I'll generally be more polite. It depends, actually. I say, look, research is not a process that you can just do. It's something you learn. It's a discipline. It's something you learn with other skilled practitioners. It's a collaborative process, and it's tested. If you don't set up an apparatus so that you can know if you're wrong, you're not doing research. So I think that standing up for facts and the making of facts is against relativism. Relativism is really lazy. It's just lazy.
Feiten staan dus niet los van de wereld waarin ze gemaakt worden. Die wereld zelf ziet Haraway als een kluwe gare die je niet zo simpel kan ontwarren. Daarvoor bedacht ze een denktechniek die ze string figures noemt. Draadfiguren.
String figuring is actually a game all over the world, even though it has different origins and different meanings all over the world. String figuring inherits patterns like the cup and saucer, but it also experiments and risks making new patterns, and that players drop threads and the pattern falls apart, and that you always have to have more than one player, even if it's just two hands. That string figuring cannot be played as one. It has to be played as many. And it, of course, then becomes a metaphor and a figure of speech. And I have adopted it as a bodily enactment of a thinking practice, so that we make worlds string figurally. So I've proposed string figuring as an actual thinking technology in philosophy that doesn't work by binary splitting, which is a very traditional way of making meanings, on, off, hot, cold, nature, culture, so forth, high, low. We're very good at making binaries. We're pretty good at making hierarchies. We kind of know how to do nesting. Russian dolls. The doll is inside the doll is inside the doll. We have many patterns for thinking, and I'm proposing that string figuring is a pattern for thinking that we ought to take more seriously. We do it, but I think we ought to make it more conscious, and I propose it as a philosophical technique for thinking. It's all about giving and receiving and cultivating the capacity, responsibility to give and receive.
Geven en nemen. Wij mensen bestaan net als andere organismen op deze aarde alleen in verbinding met andere wezens. De bacteriën in onze darmen bijvoorbeeld.
No organism on Earth becomes what they are uninfected.
We kunnen die aarde dus niet objectief observeren, want we maken er deel van uit. We zijn en maken onze wereld samen met andere wezens. Haraway noemt dat het Thulacene, het tijdperk van de aardbewoners.
The Thulacene, right. If I were renaming that word, which is of course an invented word, we're in the supposedly the Anthropocene. We have learned that perhaps the Anthropocene should be called the Capitalocene for capitalism. I think both of these terms are necessary and do important work. But I wanted to say, wait a minute, we are forgetting something really important, and that is that we remain in and of the earth, that we are earthly. It affirms the body, and it affirms bodies in a more than human way. Human is included in more than human. It means not just human. Right? It's anti-human exceptionalist. It refuses the idea that all of the world groans to give birth to man, that ridiculous patriarchal story. Okay, so that's my Thulacene. We're all in and of the earth. And of course also fantastic and monstrous and creatures of the imagination, but ordinary everyday beings. We are the earthly ones, including that computer.